Okay, so welcome to week 2. This week we'll be looking at some of William Shakespeare's work. I'll be giving you a synopsis of some of his plays. The play begins with a street brawl between the Montagues and the Capulets. The Prince of Verona intervenes and declares that the heads of the family will be held accountable for any further breach of the peace. Meanwhile, Count Paris talks to Lord Capulet about marrying his daughter Juliet, but Capulet is wary of the suit because Juliet is too young to get married. Capulet asks Paris to wait another 2 years and invites him to attend a planned Capulet ball. Lady Capulet tries to persuade her daughter to accept Paris's courtship. In this scene, Juliet's nurse is introduced as a talkative and humorous character who raised Juliet from infancy. After the brawl, Benvolio talks with his cousin Romeo, Lord Montague's son, over Romeo's recent depression. Benvolio discovers that it stems from an unrequited love for a girl named Rosaline, one of Lord Capulet's nieces. Persuaded by Benvolio and Mercutio, Romeo attends the ball of the Capulet house, in hopes of meeting Rosaline. Romeo and Juliet fall in love, not knowing that they are on opposite sides of the feuding families. After the ball, Romeo sneaks into the Capulets' courtyard and overhears Juliet vowing to love him in spite of her family's hatred of the Montagues. Romeo makes himself known to her and they agree to be married. With the help of Friar Lawrence, who hopes to reconcile the two families through their children's union, they marry secretly the next day. Juliet's cousin Tybalt, however, is offended that Romeo snuck into a Capulet ball and challenges him to a duel. Romeo, considering Tybalt a kinsman to his wife, refuses to fight him. Mercutio is incensed by Tybalt's insolence, as well as Romeo's vile submission, and accepts the duel on Romeo's behalf. Mercutio is fatally wounded and Romeo, angered by his friend's death, pursues and slays Tybalt. The prince exiles Romeo from Verona for the killing. He also adds that if Romeo came back, that he would be killed. Lord Capulet, misinterpreting Juliet's grief, agrees to marry her to Count Paris and threatens to disown her when she refuses to become Paris's joyful bride. Her mother coldly walks away from her when she pleads for her to delay it for even a month. Juliet visits Friar Lawrence for his help, and he offers her a drug which will put her into a death-like coma for 42 hours. She takes it up. When discovered apparently dead, she is laid in the family crypt. She is sleeping. The friar sends a messenger to inform Romeo of the plan, so that he can rejoin her when she awakens. The messenger, however, does not reach Romeo, and he learns of Juliet's apparent death from his servant Balthazar. Grief-stricken, Romeo buys poison from an apothecary and goes to the Capulet crypt. He encounters Paris, who has come there to mourn Juliet privately. Paris confronts Romeo, believing him to be the vandal, and in the ensuing battle, Romeo kills Paris. Still believing Juliet to be dead, he drinks the poison. Juliet then awakens and, finding Romeo dead, stabs herself with her lover's dagger. The feuding families and the prince meet at the tomb to find all three dead. Friar Lawrence recounts the story of the two star-crossed lovers, and the Montagues reveal that his wife had died of grief after hearing of her son's exiles. The family are reconciled by their children's death and agree to end their violent feud. The play ends with the prince's elegy of the lovers. For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo. At Messina, Don Pedro, an Italian prince from Aragon, and his deputies Claudio and Benedict have just returned from a successful battle. Leonato, the governor of Messina, welcomes them for passing by the city and invites them to stay for a month and to have a masked party. Leonato's niece, Beatrice, and Benedict, longtime adversaries, carry on their arguments. Claudio's feeling for Hero, Leonato's youngest daughter, are rekindled on seeing her, and Claudio soon announces to Benedict his intentions to court her. Benedict tries to dissuade his friend, but is unsuccessful in the face of Don Pedro's encouragement. While Benedict teases Claudio, Benedict swears that he will never get married. Don Pedro laughs at him and tells him that when he has found the right person, he shall get married. A masquerade ball is planned in celebration, giving a disguised Don Pedro the opportunity to woo Hero on Claudio's behalf. Don John uses the situation to get revenge on his brother Don Pedro by telling young Claudio that Don Pedro is actually wooing Hero for himself. Claudio then becomes furious at Don Pedro and confronts him. The misunderstanding is quickly resolved and Claudio wins Hero's hand in marriage. Don Pedro and his men, bored at the prospect of waiting a week for the matrimonial ceremony to take place, harbour a plan to matchmake Beatrice and Benedict. The men, led by Don Pedro, proclaim Beatrice's love for Benedict, while knowing he is eavesdropping on a conversation. The women, led by Hero, do the same likewise to Beatrice. Struck by the fact that they are apparently thought to be too proud to love each other, Beatrice and Benedict, neither willing to bear the reputation of pride, each decide to requite the love of the other. Meanwhile, Don John, Don Pedro's bastard brother, is a malcontent who plots to ruin Claudio and Hero's wedding by casting aspersions on the hero's character. His follower, Baracchio, courts Margaret, Hero's chambermaid, calling her Hero, at Hero's open bedroom window, while Don John leads Don Pedro and Claudio to spy below. The later two mistake Margaret for Hero and are convinced by what is evidence of Hero's infidelity. The next day, during the wedding at the church, Claudio climatically refuses to marry Hero. He and Don Pedro humiliate Hero publicly before a stunned congregation. The two leave, leaving the rest in shock. Hero, who has fainted from shock, revives after Don Pedro and Claudio leave, only to be reprimanded by her father. The presiding friar interrupts, believing Hero to be innocent, and he convinces the family to fake Hero's death in order to extract the truth and Claudio's remorse. Leonato and Antonio, Hero's uncles, subsequently blame Don Pedro and Claudio for Hero's death, and both challenge Claudio to duels. Benedict, forcibly prompted by Beatrice, does the same. Astonishingly, however, on the night of Don John's treachery, the local watchers apprehended Baracchio and his ally Conrad. Despite the watchers' comic ineptness, they have overheard the duo discussing their evil plans. The watch arrest them and eventually obtain the villain's confession, while informing Leonardo of Hero's innocence. Though Don John has meanwhile fled the city, a force is sent to capture him. Claudio, though maintaining he made an honest mistake, is repentant. He agrees to not only a proper epithet for Hero, but to marry a substitute, Hero's cousin, in her place. During Claudio's second wedding, however, as the dancers enter, the cousin is unmasked as Hero herself, to a most surprised and gratified Claudio. An impromptu dance is announced. Beatrice and Benedict, promptly by their friends' interference, finally confess their love for each other. As the play draws to a close, a messenger arrives with the news of Don John's capture, but his punishment is postponed another day so that the couples can enjoy their newfound happiness. Alright, that's all for this week. Tune in next week when we'll be looking at a couple more of Shakespeare's plays.